So I want to think about the research that some folks have done when it comes to what phones do, our smartphones do, in terms of distracting us. So I was reading one research project this last week, and they were talking about the fact that as they were testing participants, they had a set of skills or a set of cognitive exercises they had to do, and what they wanted to see is how well they did them, if they had their phones with them and if they didn't have their phones with them. Now, to have them with them, it doesn't mean they were using their phone. It just means the phone was in the room, in their proximity. It might have been in their pocket, might have been next to them, might have been having moments where it would go off, maybe silent mode, but you'd still sense or feel the vibration, or you'd see the screen light up, versus having the phone in another room, turned off in another room. And here's what they found, and I'm quoting now from the study, the most difficult time completing the exercises happened if the phone was on participants' desks and they were best at completing their exercises if the phone was in another room altogether. And so these cognitive exercises, they found there was a cognitive impairment. We didn't do as well as humans if our phone was in our pocket, if it was sitting somewhere near us. If it was in the other room and it was turned off, we did much better on these cognitive exercises. And what was interesting, it was just the proximity. Even if it wasn't going off, it was the fact that it was there was distracting to us. We'd glance over, the participants would glance over at the phone. Again, if there was a vibration or anything, or they'd just be thinking about it while they're doing their other, their cognitive exercises. And so what was interesting also was the fact that those folks didn't think it affected them at all to have their phone in their pocket or somewhere near them. 77% of them, 75% said that they believe their phones had no impact. The proximity of their phones had no impact on what they did and how they performed, whereas the data actually showed that it had a great impact if you had your phone near you. All right, so no matter what we're doing, when our phones go off, even if they just vibrate, we find ourselves distracted. So our concentration is broken. We go from something we were working really hard on or some conversation we were having, and in the middle of the conversation, that phone goes off, and we are no longer thinking so much about the conversation we're having with somebody in real life, as much as we are wondering who's trying to reach me, why are they trying to reach me? And I know when I'm meeting with people today, if their phone vibrates, I just say, go ahead and answer it if you need to. It's no problem. Now, I say that, I'm not offended by it. It's just the reality we live in. But whatever we were talking about, whatever problems they were facing, whatever was happening in their life that they were coming to talk to me about, that conversation gets stopped for a moment while I take a look at my phone to see what's happening, who's calling, who's trying to reach out to me. Now listen, Jesus was a very busy guy. So he's constantly on the move. He's constantly ministering with people. And Jesus also, because he's so busy and there's people always trying to get a little piece of him, he also has to take time away in solitude. He has to take time away. And I'm going to liken this to setting your phone in the other room and turning it off and having it completely off for some period of time, or maybe having it set to do not disturb. But we find that Jesus is having to take time away to pray, to connect with his Father, and also to concentrate and think about, what's before him, what the vision is, what he's going to do next, what he's going to teach, how it's going to work. And so we read in Luke 4:42, at daybreak, Jesus departed and went into a deserted place. Why did he do that? Because he needed to be able to concentrate. He needed to be unimpaired in what he's thinking about. He needs to have time with his Father and time concentrating on what he's going to do. We read this throughout the Gospels. Mark 6:46 says this, Jesus went up on the mountain to pray. He went up on the mountain to pray by himself. He went up on the mountain many times. Only once did he take his disciples with him up there. The rest of the time, he's by himself praying. That's in Luke 6:12. And that's Mark 6:46. In Luke 6:12, Jesus is preparing to call his disciples. And as he's doing that, we read, during those days, he went out to the mountain to pray. So here's a second mountain he's praying on. And he spent the entire night praying to God before he makes a really important decision. What this is telling me is that if Jesus had to get away from all the noise and everything else, that if he had a cell phone today, a smartphone today, there would be times, many times, where he would close it down, put it somewhere else, give it to someone else to carry it, so he's not distracted by what's going on his phone.